അതെ, സൗണ്ട് നോക്കിക്കോണം. ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ സ്പീക്കർ ഓഫ് ചെയ്യാം കേട്ടോ.
Respected dignitaries, faculty members, and attendees, a warm good morning to one and all. We are pleased to welcome you all to the valedictory session of the International Conference on Intellectual Property Rights, organized by the Department of Computer Science, Shantigiri College of Computer Sciences, Varitala. We begin with a prayer song to invoke the blessings of Almighty.
You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. Wonderful, merciful Savior, precious Redeemer and friend. Who would have thought that a lamb could rescue the souls of men? Oh, you rescue the souls of men. Counselor, comforter, keeper, Spirit we long to embrace. You offer hope when our hearts have hopelessly lost our way. Oh, we've hopelessly lost the way. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. Almighty infinite Father, faithfully loving your own. Here in our weakness you find us, falling before your throne. Oh, we are falling before your throne. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. Oh, we've hopelessly lost the way, but you rescue the souls of men, and we're falling before your throne. Oh, our hearts always hunger for you, Lord, for you, Lord.
We have been listening to eminent speakers deliberating in the area of information technology and intellectual property rights over the last few days. We were immensely benefited from the inaugural session by Mr. Joe Meenam Kudel and keynote session by Mr. George J. Albinson. All these valuable insights gave us new perspective that one should adopt while dealing with research. Especially, the Department of Computer Science is actively engaged with research in the areas of IT, communication, and IPR. With great delight, I welcome our dignitaries. Our principal, Reverend Father Paul Parekatal, CMI, distinguished speaker of the day, Dr. Joseph M. Kayani, Associate Professor of Communication, Western Michigan University, Father Dr. Bobby Anthony CMI, Principal at Chandigarh Institute of Management, Barsar, Father Dino Kallikat CMI, Administrator, Father Anish Chirtani CMI, Head of the Department, Dr. Dhanya Job, and Conference Convener, Ms. Amita Joseph. Thank you for joining us today. I'm most pleased to introduce our distinguished speaker of the day, Dr. Joseph M. Kayani. Dr. Joseph M. Kayani is a native of Kerala, and he currently serves as the Associate Professor of Communication at the School of Communication at Western Michigan University, USA. Dr. Kayani holds a doctorate from Florida State University, and his teaching interests are in interactive communication and media technologies. Dr. Kayani teaches both the graduate and the undergraduate courses on organizational communication technologies, mass media theory, telecommunication networks, web design, and digital communication. Dr. Kayani's articles have appeared in various noted journals, namely Human Communication Research, Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, Journal of the American Society for Information Science, and the American Communication Journal. He is a member of the International Communication Association and Global Communication Research Association. We're truly proud to invite Dr. Joseph M. Kayani to kindly release the conference proceedings and to take over with the technical session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Principal Reverend Father Paul Parekatal, Head of the Department, Dr. Dhanya Job, Conference Convener, Professor Amita Joseph, respected professors and administrators from different institutions, and students, especially those who are being celebrated today at this valedictory ceremony for their outstanding projects and papers. Thank you for inviting me to join you in this ceremony and witness the publication of the proceedings of the International Conference on Intellectual Property Rights. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of this conference and all those who made presentations at the conference. I have had the privilege of seeing some of the high quality projects presented at the conference, and they were very impressive, and congratulations. So now it is my honor to declare the release of the proceedings of the 2021 International Conference on Intellectual Property Rights that took place in Chandigarh College of Computer Sciences on May 20th of this year. Okay, I'm asked to talk to you briefly about intellectual property rights and the internet. Before I get to the internet and intellectual property rights, let me give you a brief overview of the history of intellectual property rights that most of you are familiar with. The moral and ethical principle behind the intellectual property rights is that anyone who creates something new, a new idea or a new product, should have the right to benefit from it financially. So there is no way to pay the creator or a writer or an author. There are no organizations to pay the author. So what we do is this, that we provide the exclusive use of the invention to the author, to the creator for a specific amount of time, so that the author or the creator can financially benefit from it. That is the principle. That is a moral and ethical principle that underlie all intellectual property rights. It has been said that this idea is nothing new. It started 5 centuries before Christ in BC, 5th century BC. Some of the Greek communities used to practice this, but it became legal and it became part of the legal system only in the 15th century in Great Britain. And in the 15th century, probably it applied only to authors, musicians, painters, and playwrights like Shakespeare. But once the Industrial Revolution began, it was not only just products, it was not only written material, but also devices, technologies, theories, and scientific principles. So as a moral principle, everyone was okay with it. Everyone could agree on that, but the actual practice was a little difficult. The problem is how to determine who is the true author or a true creator or an inventor of an invention. The scientific principles are very often widely known, and a lot of inventors use the scientific knowledge to develop devices and technical instruments. Often they borrowed from one another. And so it was very difficult to determine who exactly is the true inventor. 19th century is full of such examples. Who is the inventor of radio? Some would say it was Marconi, or some would say it was Tesla. There are so many inventors whose inventions cross-pollinated each other's brains, and so you cannot actually determine who was the true inventor. And so what did they do? Each inventor went to the courts. They waged legal battles over these inventions. And these legal battles went on sometimes for years. For example, it is said that, radio as an invention, radio technology, would not have come about as a practical means of long-distance communication, except for World War I. Until then, all the inventors who had developed technologies associated with radio, they were all waging legal battles with one another, and they could not come together to work out a system, a communication system. And so World War I occurred, and then the government took over all the patents from all the various inventors. And while it was under the care of the government, being used for the war effort, all the different pieces owned by different inventors where it came together, or the government engineers put them together and made it a viable communication technology. And so sometimes this battle over individual patent rights is a damper on the progress in the scientific field. Well, that was the 19th century. Incidentally, as we are talking about the World War I, it is interesting to note that after World War I, we don't hear about individual inventors. Most of the inventors we have learned about in school, about Edison or Alexander Graham Bell or Marconi, they were all inventors of the 19th century. After World War I, we don't hear about individual inventors. It is not that there were no inventions. As you all know, 20th century is full of inventions, but you don't hear about them. You don't hear about Marconi, you don't hear about Edison, but you hear about Microsoft, you hear about IBM, you hear about corporations. That is because from the early part of the 20th century, individual inventors became employees of corporations. Big corporations started employing them, employing scientists and inventors. And so now the intellectual property rights actually occur between corporations. Individual rights have been subsumed by corporations. For example, now we have the COVID vaccine. You all have heard about the Pfizer vaccine, Moderna vaccine, Johnson & Johnson vaccines, and several others. But you don't hear about the scientists who develop them because they don't own them. It is the corporations who own them. So corporate assets, it is the corporate property. Most of these inventions and devices, they all belong to corporations. And so the battles are fought between corporations. There is even, corporate assets are very, very central to national assets. So corporate rivalries, corporate legal battles enter the national scene that become national rivalries. And so also we hear about stories about how these laws, patent laws, intellectual property rights are often misused in the international level. There is high-level espionage to steal trade secrets and privileged information. And the world intellectual property rights, as you know, property organization, WIPO, is actually an agency of United Nations. United Nations is not a democratic organization. It is an association of nations, but they are not all equal. So the corporation, the nations look after the corporations that are in their country, and the nations that are powerful, like the nations with veto power in the United Nations, they control their interests. So there is no fairness with regard to we cannot expect fair treatment from even WIPO. So there are a lot of bad practices. For example, these days you may have heard about, patent laws being misused by corporations and some nations to patent seeds. Farmers have been farming using these seeds for centuries, but somebody came up with a bright idea to patent them so that farmers have to buy it from those corporations. And so there has already been quite a few unfair practices, business practices conducted by some of these corporations supported by the nations. All right, another thing I want to bring to your attention is this, that, in the early years, it was about authors and creators and painters. But then once Industrial Revolution occurred, during the Industrial Revolution, especially after the development of the printing press, it is not the writing that matters. You write a novel, write a book. It's actually duplicating those writings, printing the book and distributing it internationally through bookstores and their distribution channels. And so authors actually lost some of their ownership because the production processes became actually more important than the creation of the product itself. So now that we are living in the information society age, information is the most valuable commodity today. And so those who are creators of information, they are provided royalties, but more than them, it is the publishers and the people who distribute information. They have become central to this intellectual property debate. So information has become a commodity that is being manufactured and distributed. Consider publishing houses or even movie studios and television studios. They are all creating and distributing information. Who owns the copyright? Who owns the patents, and who owns the intellectual property rights? Most of the time it is the production houses and the distributors. And the governments, as I said, very often support enacted laws to protect these entities, these corporations. And this was the way in the 20th century. 20th century, the consolidation of the business aspect of information really occurred. The only exception to that was the internet. That's where I come to the internet. Internet was actually an experiment to break away from this corporate control and the government control over information. It was actually, as you know, in the late 1960s, the first internet-based technologies were developed, and most of those technologies were developed by young people like you. So idealistic people who wanted to build a system that will break out of the traditional mode of traditional model where the government and the corporations control the flow of information. So, as you know, it was, first of all, internet was based on a decentralized architecture. You're all familiar with the open source movement where people created things and shared it without worrying about intellectual property rights. It is not that the copyright was not respected, but it was not criminalized. It was not enforced. So it was, examples like Wikipedia and others exist where people shared the information that they had without any expectation for payment. Well, that ideal state of the internet's, we were able to maintain it for maybe 20 years. By the end of the 20th century, especially after the invention of the World Wide Web, I must also mention that the inventor of the World Wide Web, the person who wrote the basic code for the internet, for the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, he actually wrote the code and distributed it for free. And that is the reason it spreads like wildfire and everybody adopted the World Wide Web within a matter of 3 or 4 years. Internet and the World Wide Web has become the standard interface for all information sharing today, as you well know. And we experience the internet as limitless, but I also would like to point out that today, 95% of the information using the internet interface or on the internet is behind paywalls. They are not free. And in addition to that, internet gave birth to huge corporations like Google and Facebook. They have gathered information about us, information all over the world. They indexed them, they collated them, and they distributed. And so now the question is, who owns the copyright for that? They have gathered, and we have become so dependent on these large corporations, and they have become enormously powerful. And so the battle over individual property rights, intellectual property rights have been lost. I don't think we can actually claim any, at the individual level, that is a lost battle. Any battle on that front is being fought by corporations. And internet itself is under stress. Recently, I read an article that suggested that internet will break down in another 4 or 5 years. That is because of the actions of the government and very often when the internet companies. Internet companies are only driven by profits. And the governments who used to control the flow of information within their country cannot control it any longer. And so as a result, governments are trying to exert some sort of control. But just take the example of President Trump. He is the most powerful man in the world. And the day he got out of the White House, Twitter banned him, Facebook banned him. He had 85 million followers, and within one day, he lost access to every one of them. So, these companies have become enormously powerful, and governments have been trying to control them. For instance, you are familiar with what happened with Indian government recently, trying to, asking Twitter to ban the accounts of farmers, the protesters. And more recently, Australian government tried to pass laws to force Facebook to pay the publishers, news publishers and news agencies in that country. And what did Facebook threaten them with? They said, we will not accept anymore. We will not collect any more news, and we will not distribute news from Australia to anyone. So, they have an enormous clout, and they have become enormously powerful. And so since they gather every post you make on the Facebook, and everything that you do on the internet is gathered, indexed, and collated, they can also at some point claim intellectual property rights over the information that they have gathered, not only what is available out there, but also our own personal information. So I think the next battle is going to be not for intellectual property rights for our products, but over our own personal information. That probably is going to be our next battle. So I think I am almost near the end of my time. So I would like to summarize and say that, as I said, as a moral principle, we are all, and nobody can disagree with the idea that creators and inventors deserve, some sort of payment. But the political and economic factors in the practice of intellectual property rights have been very, very complex. And the way it is interpreted by corporations, not only, which has often favored distributors and manufacturers rather than creators themselves, that is also troublesome. I don't think the creators, especially the scientists, do get their fair share of financial benefits. It is often in the application developers or the companies that produce and distribute them. And finally, I would like to caution you to the next frontier on this battle, that our own personal informations are at risk of being, taken up by these huge internet companies and sold for a profit. All right, that's all I want to say. Thank you very much. And thanks again for inviting me to this meeting, this presentation, this event.
Thank you, sir. I wish to express a sincere gratitude to Dr. Joseph M. Kayani for addressing this conference. It was really very informative, and it has also given us a lot of understanding to work further in this area. Dr. Kayani has kindly consented to take a session at US time, 10 p.m., and he has still been energetic. A big thank you from our hearts. Thank you. Our principal, Father Paul Parikatal, CMI, has always shown a keen interest in our activities, and he has always extended a keen support to the programs we undertake. Father, we kindly request you to announce the Best Paper Awards to our attendees.
Esteemed guest of the day, Dr. Joseph M. Kayani, the teachers and my dear students. I think I am asked to do two activities. First, launching of the product. I will do that first. I'm happy to launch the second product of incubation cell of computer science department. This product is named as automated firefighter robot. It's a prototype developed by Vishnu Vinod of S for BCA. It's a full-fledged real-time IoT device without any human interaction that can detect and extinguish fire. It can reach out any area with interactive real-time control panel with SMS alert systems. can be controlled from anywhere with the help of properly controlled web browsers. The name of Shantigiri College, I congratulate Vishnu for his second innovative product and the incubation cell of computer science department for their unique initiatives. I believe these products should be introduced to the real open market sooner or later. Congratulations once again. Now, I'm happy to announce Best Paper Awards of the International Conference of IPR conducted by the Computer Science Department of Shantigiri College. Now, the authors. First one, Anchana Yashodharan and team. Yes, going it. Third, Mintu Isaac and Ann Kapan. Or Akhil Haridas. 5, Aromal Balakrishnan. 6, Sneha Lisisani and team. Sincere congratulations to all the authors who have done a great work. Congratulations once again.
The Department of Computer Science aims to nurture and empower budding innovators and develop an IT ecosystem to effectively scale their technology ventures, which is core to the Institute's mission. Congratulations, Vishnu. Certainly you have triggered waves of inspiration. Keep going. I request the attendees to please take a look at the video. As we near to the close of the ceremony, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Joseph M. Kayani for accepting our invitation and joining us today and sharing your valuable time with us. We anticipate your long-lasting association with Shantigiri College. Thank you once again. We're extremely thankful to our principal, Father Paul Parikatal, CMI, Barsar, Father Dino Kallikat, CMI, and Administrator, Father Anish Chirtani, CMI. Your presence matters to us, and it definitely brings a completeness to this event. I'm extremely grateful to our HOD, Dr. Dhanya John, and convener, Ms. Amita Joseph. Thank you all. Thank you for all that you have done for the successful completion of this conference. Thank you, dear faculty members and students, for giving your huge support and strengthening our efforts. Thank you, technical team, for that wonderful support. On that note, we conclude a remarkable and memorable international conference on intellectual property rights. Thank you all. Let's rise with the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे